Welcome everybody to the Cover 2 podcast on a beautiful Wednesday morning. Wherever you may be, you will enjoy the next couple hours of basketball talk, baseball talk, and we're actually going to get into the best rivalries in sports a little later. But of course, we want to start off the show by saying that I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And this is the Cover 2 podcast. Well, we want to start legitimately the whole podcast by talking about the NBA playoffs. Of course, they're kind of getting into the final little stretch here. The conference finals matchups are being hashed out, or they're at least being set up now. They're not being hashed out yet, but they're being set up. We have 3 teams through to the conference finals. You may have heard of the Cavs and Warriors before, and the Rockets got into the conference finals. We're still awaiting that Celtics 76ers game here on Wednesday. If you're listening on another day, you probably know whether that game, that series is in Game 6 or the Boston Celtics are playing the Cavs. So, Jared, I think we should start off by discussing LeBronto. Yeah, LeBronto, because LeBron has dominated the Raptors once again. The Raptors have lost 10 games in a row to the Cavs in the playoffs. So, not looking good for Toronto, but let's start off. How did the Cavs sweep the Raptors after barely getting through the Indiana Pacers?
I think I'm still trying to figure that question out myself, because I'm sitting here and saying, all right, Cleveland played really well this entire series, leading up to the playoffs, coming in, not as the number 1 seed, as we're used to seeing Cleveland this year. I believe, what was their seed this year? Were they a 4 or a 5?
You talk about
the Cavs.
Cavs, yeah, number 4.
Number 4, right. So they kind of had more of a rocky up and down year than we expected. So going into the playoffs, it was kind of like, all right, is this team getting older? Even with the additions that they got midway through the year, is that not working? There was a lot more question marks around this team as opposed to the last couple years. And going into this matchup with the number 1 seed Toronto Raptors, I myself was like, I think Toronto's going to win this series. I don't think Cleveland has the firepower to keep up with these guys. I think this is Toronto's time. DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry, it's time for these 2 guys to step up and put Toronto really on the map. And unfortunately, we didn't see that. So my major question is, are the Cavaliers back to the old Cavaliers that we think they are? Or are the Raptors just really not that good?
Well, I don't think the Cavs are back to the old Cavaliers, because it's a different team this year. They've added guys like Jordan Clarkson and Rodney Hood and George Hill during the season, so they kind of disbanded the old team. I think it's good old LeBron is still there. That's the main cog in this whole thing. Even Tyronn Lue kind of alluded to that in the press conference after they swept the Raptors, that, hey, when you have LeBron on your team, it's just different. And the Raptors, it just does seem like they can't beat him. So, you know what's funny? Here's more of the question. Is it just the Cavs versus Toronto, or has this Cavs team actually changed? I personally think that it's just that they have Toronto's number, and that this series is not necessarily to look at going into this series against the 76ers or Celtics, because I do think that series will be more competitive than this Toronto one did, just because there definitely isn't a familiarity between the Celtics and the 76ers with the Cavs, because they're relatively new, young teams. So there's no way the Cavs can necessarily know what's going to come, because both these teams, well, at least 76ers, have not been making the playoffs lately. So nobody really knows, and the Celtics are still brand new with a lot of new players. So, I don't know. This series was very confusing to me, especially the fact that it ended in a sweep. I guess we could jump into Toronto now, before we kind of get back into the Cavs. Toronto. Jared, what is their problem? What do they need to do to beat a team like the Cavs, to move on in the playoffs, and just not embarrass themselves year after year?
They don't have a superstar. Plain and simple.
So you're saying DeMar DeRozan isn't a superstar?
No, he's not. He's a star, and I know that may sound funny to people, like stars, superstars.
No, there's
really
a difference.
That much of a difference.
Yeah, there's a difference.
There's a difference. DeMar DeRozan is a star. Kyle Lowry, yeah, he's an all-star player. But to be very honest, those 2 guys, along with the role players of Serge Ibaka and some of the other guys, they're just plain and simply not good enough. They don't have what it takes as a collective unit to beat LeBron and his cast. And I think that's really what it comes down to. There was a lot of hype around this Toronto team this year, I think, because they came in as the number 1 seed. But as they showed, they weren't prepared, and I don't think they had a go-to scorer or a guy that could sit here and match LeBron's play. Now, I'm not saying you have to have a guy that's as good as LeBron, because there's no one like that in the NBA. Kevin Durant's probably the closest, but he's not even on LeBron's level. I'm saying you need to have a guy that you can say, all right, it's crunch time, there's a couple minutes left, we're down by 6, we need you to go score and take this one home for us. And DeMar DeRozan has shown that at times, but consistently. I mean, Game 3, DeMar DeRozan was on the bench for the entire fourth quarter.
It's ridiculous.
I mean, and he's, one of your best players on the team. So I think that right there shows that Toronto just really didn't have the talent overall. And, you said it at the beginning of the segment. The Cavs just have Toronto's number, plain and simple. LeBron, they know how to beat the team. And a perfect example of this is in the first quarter of the final game. I believe it was George Hill in two, it was like almost back-to-back possessions. George Hill grabbed a rebound on one possession, and the other possession he was outlet of the ball. He literally ran all the way down the court, uncontested, no one guarded him. George Hill went right down the middle and dunked it both times.
You're talking about this is Game 4 you're talking about?
This is Game 4.
Okay, when I watched the highlights of that game, it literally seemed like the Toronto didn't care.
No, they didn't. They didn't. Like, the first thing of defense in basketball is stop the ball.
Yeah.
And Toronto,
maybe not let the guy get to the hoop.
Toronto went and guarded all the other guys that were on the perimeter and didn't even have the ball in their hands. George Hill literally could have walked down the middle of the court, and he dunked it both times. It was even the announcers were kind of like, did that really just happen?
Oh, they
twice?
were making a LeBronto joke that I made at the beginning of the podcast.
Yeah.
They're like, this is stupid. We're watching literally almost it'd be like watching an amateur team versus an NBA team. Like, this team is just outmatched. There's no way they're going to win. And LeBron is literally going to do, and everybody else, whatever the hell they want on the court. It's embarrassing from Toronto. It's sad to watch a team just get dismantled after they had the best season they've ever had as a franchise, as far as the regular season goes. But man, wow, is that disappointing. Now, we talk about how bad the defense was, what's happening with the Stars. The topic of conversation now is it Dwayne Casey's fault or is it the Stars' fault? Which one do you put blame on?
I'm going to go with the Stars. Dwayne Casey isn't out there playing. He's not the one putting up shots. He's not the one defending players.
I mean, he might have actually done better than some of the players.
Potentially, he could have. Now, listen, he does get some of the blame because he is the head coach, and that's what he gets paid to do. So whether it's rotations or plays or whatever the case may be, yes, he is a part of the reason why this Raptors team is now going home and got swept by the Cavaliers. But to me, the majority of this blame falls on the players, and I think you have to start with Kyle Lowry and DeMar DeRozan because they're not only the two best players on this team, but they're supposedly the leaders of this team, and they've been together long enough now to where it was basically put up or shut up. And so, in my opinion, I think it's time that the Raptors, in some form or fashion, blow up this team and start from scratch. Team.
Yeah, that's an interesting phrase to use.
They've had the same core players for how many years now? I don't know exactly, but it's been 3-4 years at least, right?
At least,
so that is more than enough time to get other, role players to surround DeRozan and Lowry and get this team to the finals where they think they should be. They haven't been able to do it. At some point, there's a ticking clock. All right, these guys get paid. They don't get paid to lose. You get paid to win. And when you've had the same core nucleus for 4 or 5 years and it hasn't worked, it's time for a change.
Yeah, no, I think it is. There is time for a change. I don't know if it's Dwayne Casey. You might, not that Dwayne Casey deserves to get fired, but if you're the Toronto organization, you might have to fire him to show the team that we have to make a change. And I think a lot of times it's easier to fire a coach than maybe trade some players. I mean, for example, look at this. We see the Miami Marlins in baseball right now. They blew up that team completely. I've never seen a team get torn apart like that in my life. I mean, they literally traded every player that was an all-star for them. I think they traded 100 home runs away from that team. And now Derek Jeter's getting all this flack because Don Mattingly's still the coach, but they traded away all the players. I think if he would have traded Don Mattingly, maybe just traded Giancarlo Stanton, he would be having a better rap right now. Because you're saying, okay, well, we fired the coach because we think there was something systematically wrong. Or even if there wasn't, we're willing to change but we're not necessarily going to blow up the team. So I disagree with you. I don't think they should blow up the team. I do think they should change some things up and maybe change the roles of guys like DeRozan and Lowry. I still think they should add one more guy, a guy of possibly a Paul George, for example, or a guy that can complement Lowry and DeRozan to lower their roles. Because I think you're right. We all thought DeMar DeRozan might have changed to a superstar this year. He started in the All-Star game. The fans voted him to be the starting All-Star game. Now, there's other people to vote too, but the fans, fans got to make an impact, and they made the impact by saying he's good enough to be a starter in the All-Star game. So we thought, okay, DeMar DeRozan might have, he might be a superstar now. And they go 57 and whatever during the regular season, 57 and 25, and they dominate the East, to be honest. And then he screws up in the playoffs again. I think their roles have to be lowered, first of all. I think they need another guy. I don't think you trade them away because the team is still, they still can win 57 games, and they won 61 games total during the season. So I wouldn't call that a complete disaster of a season. But I do think that I would rather add a player or maybe trade some of the role players, maybe get some draft picks, something like that, redo something. I wouldn't fire the coach, but I wouldn't be surprised because it would make an impact to the fans that they're actually willing to make a change. But I think blowing up the team, that's not the best thing. I think the perfect example of that is Derek Jeter to the Marlins.
Okay. Yeah, I hear what you're saying. Well, what I'm saying is they've had this same core nucleus for years and years. Yeah. And I think at a certain point, you get tired of seeing the same results. It's like every single year, the Raptors, they have such a good team on paper. Yeah. They're going to do really well. They're in the Eastern Conference, so they have an easier route to get to the playoffs. Every single year we say that. And for the majority of the year, they're on par with what people are saying. And even this year, they beat expectations by being the number one seed and beating the Cleveland Cavaliers to get that number one seed. So it was like, oh wow, all right, like this Raptors team is for real now. They're not just a good playoff contender. These guys are for real, and like we said last week, I think they can beat the Cavs.
I thought they could beat
right?
too, yeah.
I think at a certain point you get tired of the same results with the same people. And listen, in this business, this is a professional business where these guys get paid millions and millions of dollars. I know obviously the players want to sit together, but as a coach and the general manager and the owner of that franchise, how many years are you going to end up with the same results? Because at the end of the day, it's about winning championships. And I know that Toronto has never done that in their franchise history, but it's not about getting to the second round of the playoffs and getting bounced. It's about winning championships. And so, yes, would adding a Paul George or adding another player with this nucleus help them? I think it would. But I think they've run their course. And if I was the owner, I would be fed up with it and I would be done. One of the reasons I always say this, and I'm backing up my words right here by saying it's always one thing to say, oh, just fire him or cut him or trade him away or let him go. Okay, well, who are you going to replace him with? I think that they need to blow up this team, go after Kawhi, go after LeBron, go after Paul George, do whatever you need to do to get a superstar or two superstars on this team. And also, if you do let Dwayne Casey go, you've got Mark Jackson, who I think is a fantastic coach out there.
I would agree with that.
You've got Jeff Van Gundy out there, the tag team on ABC. I think both of those coaches would be not only fantastic coaches for this franchise, but they're the types of coaches that could lure superstars in to play for them. So I think those two guys off the top of my head would be great candidates if the Raptors did fire their coach.
Okay, well let's look at this scenario because I just thought about this in my head because even my answer I just said right there, I didn't have all I said was let's add one more guy. That seems like what every team is doing that right now. You saw the Thunder do that this year, they added two. You saw the Rockets do that this year, and they ended up making the Western Conference Finals. What if the Raptors look like, and this is hard to swallow if you're a Raptors fan, but what if they look at it and say, what if LeBron goes to the West? Then we're the best team in the East. You have the Celtics moving up and stuff like that, but I would see the Raptors having a better chance against the 76ers or Celtics in a series than against the Cavs. So what if they look at it like this? Hey, our team is really good. We can really beat anybody in the Eastern Conference besides the Cavaliers. So if the Cavaliers get blown up this year and LeBron leaves, that team is not going to be good anymore. They're not going to be near the finals team that they've had the last couple of years. So what if Toronto waits it out and waits for LeBron to make a decision? And that's when they make it. Because I think this team could still make it to the NBA Finals as long as they don't have the Cavs in their road. I just think this is a mental block for some reason, and you could even see it after Game 1. They were saying LeBron's not in our head, which means LeBron is in our head. So, I don't know. There's a couple things you got to do, but I wouldn't necessarily just, fire the shot of let's just make a decision, and then all of a sudden you blow up this team and your team ends up not being that good. And, oh, look at that. You're the best team you would have been the best team in the East. So, there is definitely some decision making, but I think they should wait to see what the Cavaliers do in the offseason. And that's tough.
I don't know if I can agree with any of what you just said right there. I'm sorry. So LeBron goes to the West and he's not in the East anymore. Yeah, you only play him twice a year as opposed to 4 times a year.
Well, you wouldn't have to play him in a playoff series.
Right,
but the regular season doesn't matter.
LeBron makes it to the finals, and so do you guys. Your kryptonite's back.
But you made it to the finals.
Okay, so it's just about making it to the finals. It's not about winning anymore.
To be honest, yeah, because they haven't made it to the finals yet.
Okay.
They've been in the conference final. I think you make it to the finals.
Right. Here's my thing. I don't as an organization, I don't think you can sit and wait for things to happen. I think they need to be proactive. Now, listen, yeah, of course, if LeBron leaves and goes to the West, yes, that's going to help out the Raptors because they don't have to see LeBron as much. Like, that's just common sense. I get that. But I don't think you can sit and wait and say, hey, you know what, guys? We're going to hold on to you for now, and we're going to see what Cleveland does, and we're going to see if Kyrie Irving comes back healthy for the Celtics, and we're going to see if next year...
No, just the Caps. I'm not talking about any other team.
Just the Caps.
Just the Cavaliers.
Yeah, I don't think I don't know, this just is my feeling. You can't sit and wait to see what other teams do. If you have an opportunity to go get a player, if it's not LeBron, if it's Paul George or Russell Westbrook or Kawhi Leonard or whoever it is, if you have an opportunity to go and make your team better, you do it without hesitation because all the other 29 teams in the league are not waiting for you to do anything. Mm-hmm. So I don't think you should wait for the Cavaliers to do something because guess what? What if the Cavaliers don't really trade LeBron or if LeBron just ends up staying? Like all these rumors are going to be out there this whole entire offseason. Oh, LeBron moved his kids to LA. LeBron, he won a championship in Cleveland so he doesn't need to prove anything else. Like all these rumors are going to be out there, but the Raptors aren't really going to know what Cleveland does until LeBron comes out with his own statement. So what, you're going to wait the entire offseason and miss on opportunities to make your team better just because you want to wait to see what Cleveland does? I don't think that should happen at all.
I think what I'm essentially saying is the Raptors are screwed.
Okay.
And maybe it has to take an extreme decision like that to change this team. Because I don't think firing the coach would be enough to make the change. I don't think I don't think blowing up the team, obviously, would make them a better team. But so maybe it's something drastic. I don't really know what to do with Toronto, so I'm gonna come up with an extreme scenario.
All right.
Because that's what I do when I can't come up with stuff in my life and stuff. I'll be like, I'll just do something extreme or whatever. But nonetheless, the Cavs move on, and they are going to play the Celtics or 76ers. Toronto is not. They're going fishing, like they say on Inside the NBA. And we won't see them for a while. And they might be, according to Jared, a completely different team next time we see them. Well, let's move to two teams that absolutely deserve to be in the conference finals and are not an embarrassment to the league. The Rockets and Warriors. Jared, we finally got the series. We've been anticipating this essentially since the Rockets proved they were a legitimate contender this season. And now we get it. Now my question to you is, can the Raptors actually do it? Can they actually beat...
The Raptors? The Rockets?
Excuse me. Raptors absolutely cannot do it. The Rockets, though, can they actually beat Golden State? Because if you remember, I was high on the New Orleans Pelicans. I was saying if Steph doesn't come back, and this might be, a 6-7 game series or whatever, and you never know, the Pelicans can win. Well, that was before I knew that Steph was his injury was not as bad as it seems, and he still can score 40 points during a game. So the Warriors are back, essentially, and this team is now the team that won it last year and won it the year before that. So my question to you is, can the Rockets actually do it? Do they have a legitimate chance to win this series, or are the Warriors just going to move on again to the finals?
Yes, the Rockets do have a legitimate chance to beat the Warriors. Will they? No. And in my opinion, one simple reason, I don't think the Raptors have the defense to stop the Warriors.
Rockets, you just see.
I'm sorry. You're getting me on the Raptors thing. Damn it. No, the Rockets, in my opinion, do not have the defense to stop the entire core of the Warriors. You're right. Steph Curry's back. He came out and dropped 30-something off the bench in his first game back. So he's back to hopefully fully healthy status. Listen, this Rockets team is obviously loaded. Chris Paul, if you saw the closeout game against Utah, he's the real deal. And if you don't think he's not fired up, as he's never made it to the finals in his career, then you are completely wrong. James Harden obviously should be the MVP, best player on that team. But then they do have good role guys. Trevor Ariza is probably the most underrated player on that team because he does so much. He can shoot the three. He's so versatile. He can guard basically the 1 through 4 spots. So he can guard the point guard, shooting guard, small forward, power forward. He's that lengthy. PJ Tucker is a really, really good 3-point shooter.
Good defender as well.
Right. You've got Nene. You have Joe Johnson coming off the bench.
Eric Gordon.
Yeah. So this team they are loaded. And other than Trevor Ariza, most of those players that I just mentioned are offensive players. And so that's great because I think they're going to be able to keep up the scoring pace with the Warriors, but I don't think they're going to be able to stop the Warriors at all. I think the Warriors have too much firepower, and I think that's the one main reason why I'm going to go with the Warriors in this series. I think it's going at least 6. I hope it goes 7. I think it's going to be a great matchup. But in the end, I don't think the Rockets have enough good defenders to stop all of the Warriors players. And let's not remember, Mike D'Antoni could still care less about defense. He still wants his guys going up and jacking threes and keeping the score really high, which is going to be great for the fans because I think it's going to be a great series like I mentioned. But no, I think the Warriors will win out because I think they have too much firepower that the Rockets will not be able to stop.
Yeah, no, I'm going to agree with you. I do think the Warriors will advance. And one of the reasons Kenny Smith said something very, I don't want to say, he said something very smart the other day when he alluded to the fact that the Rockets, are Chris Paul and Harden really going to be able to guard Klay Thompson and Curry? Probably not. And they don't have, like we just mentioned, they have Ariza and they have PJ Tucker, but those guys aren't 48-minute guys. They can't just guard, the star players for the Warriors all game. So I think the defense is the thing that's gonna kill the Rockets.
James Harden can't guard anybody.
No,
Chris Paul is actually a good point guard defender. But James Harden, I mean, him and Mike D'Antoni were like made to be together because neither of them care about defense.
It would service the Rockets probably better to just have James Harden on offense, play offense, do his thing, then get off the court, and then have maybe an intern run and put a cardboard cutout of him in the middle of the court to make him maybe save energy for the rest of the game. Because that's essentially what he is on defense. A cardboard cutout that lets people go around him all day, every day. Chris Paul, he's a good defender, but he's not like this standout guy that's going to be able to stop Curry. Now, he does have a lot of experience guarding Steph Curry. The Clippers have had series with them in the playoffs. They used to play them 4 times a year. So Chris Paul has seen Curry, probably knows how to defend him maybe better than anybody else in the league, to be honest. But still, I think the defense is the thing that's going to kill the Rockets. I think offense does not win championships. Defense wins championships. And the Warriors' defense, although not maybe the best in the league, it's pretty damn good. And they're going to be able to stop enough of the Rockets' offense, I think. And they're obviously going to score at will. And I think I'm actually going to go a little bold with this. I think it's Warriors in 5.
Really?
I think what's going to happen is the Warriors are not going to lose at home, I don't think. And what they're going to do is they're going to steal a game in Houston, and I think they'll be able to beat Houston 2 out of 3 times.
Wow, so you don't think Houston having home court advantage means really anything?
No, because I just think the Warriors' literal home field advantage of like that crowd and that place being so loud at Oracle Arena, they don't lose there. And when they're on, I think they literally feed off. It's almost like a video game when you're watching them play. They feed off the crowd. The higher energy the crowd gets, the better the Warriors play. And I just think the Rockets, there's no way they're going to be able to go in there and beat them in a game. And especially with the fact they can't play defense, I don't think it's going to work out. And I think the Warriors will end up winning in 5. I usually tried to say that these series will go longer like I did with the Pelicans. But I just don't think this one is. I think the Rockets, they are as good as we think they are. The Warriors are just one of the best teams ever. And you're just not going to beat them when you can't play defense. And I think something for the Rockets to look at, possibly in the offseason, because I don't think they'll win the series, is to maybe get guys like an Andre Roberson or a defensive specialist to come on the field, come on the court, and play for them. But I'm going to go Warriors in 5. I think this will be a little easier than people think because of that lack of defense from Houston.
Okay, yeah, well, just one more quick comment because I know we need to wrap this segment up. As far as defense goes for the Warriors, I'm not sitting here and saying they're the best defense, in
Talking
NBA.
about the Warriors?
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm not saying they're the best defense ever. And it's not even that they're a great, individual. They don't have great individual defensive players. I think collectively, as a team, they play great team defense. Now, Draymond Green is one of the best individual defensive players in the NBA. I think there's no question about that. But the thing that they do well is they talk, they communicate, and they play well. They get back on defense and they help each other. To whereas the Rockets, it's a little more lackadaisical. I mean, really, Chris Paul is the most vocal player on that team, but a lot of those other guys, and I think it's just the mentality that Mike D'Antoni has set on that team that, hey, it's okay to give up points because we're just going to go down and score more points. So whereas the Warriors are like, yeah, we can come out and score 120, 130 points if we want to, but we don't want to do that. We also want to play defense as a team. And I think that right there, the team defensive chemistry that the Warriors have, I think is something that the Rockets definitely lack. And I think that's what's ultimately going to hurt the Rockets in the end.
I agree. Good discussion. I can't wait for these playoff series to start, especially that Houston Golden State one. And we'll be talking about it next week for sure on the podcast. Coming up next, we're going to be doing a little MLB storylines. Matt Harvey has been traded from the Mets after being released. Kershaw's on the DL, and the Red Sox and the Yankees are playing. It's coming up next on the Cover 2 podcast.
Donaldson a couple of feet in the grave already. To Seager, the pick, the throw. Paxton has done it. It's a no-hitter. The left-hander from Laddish, British Columbia, has just no-hit the Blue Jays on his native soil.
The 2-2. He struck him out. The Dodgers have thrown a combined no-hitter. On a night where Fernando Valenzuela throws out the ceremonial first pitch, Monterrey, Mexico can throw its sombrero to the sky.
The other big news pitching-wise, of course, in that division is Clayton Kershaw, bicep tendonitis. Again, he goes on the 10-day DL. He does look like a slightly different pitcher. Dan O'Dowd was running tape of him all through the weekend. A little less explosion, and yet his results were still fairly good. He had more strikeouts than innings pitched. Take a look at these numbers: 48 strikeouts and only 10 walks. The ERA 2.86.
For the last couple of years, including this year, Cowboy, he's not been the same Matt Harvey.
No, and I think that's indicative of the thoracic outlet syndrome surgery that he had, Tom. And that's one of those things that as you move along, what you have to hope for is that the velocity starts to pick up a little bit. The freedom of movement in the shoulder starts to pick up a little bit, and he's able to actually pitch. Right now, he's had a difficult time, but if he's coming to the Reds, he has an opportunity to start every 5th day, and hopefully that will get him back in gear.
Welcome back to the show. As Nick had mentioned before we went to break, we're moving and switching over to a little MLB talk. We've got Matt Harvey being traded. That whole roller coaster of a ride with the Mets is now over. We had a no-hitter last night in Major League Baseball. A Seattle Mariners pitcher with a no-hitter last night. We'll get into that. We'll get into Kershaw going on the DL. And speaking of the Dodgers, since our last podcast last Wednesday, there were actually 2 no-hitters.
Yes.
The Dodgers had a combined no-hitter. I believe it was 3 or 4 pitchers that they had going.
4. They had
4.
3 relievers and Walker Buehler, rookie.
Right. So we've had 2 no-hitters.
That's the only good thing the Dodgers have done in the last week.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
As you can tell, Nick is a Dodger fan, and I don't think he's too happy with how the Dodgers have played so far.
Not
but I do want to start with Matt Harvey. I think that's one of the bigger stories going on in baseball right now. Matt Harvey coming in 2012 as a rookie and completely dominating, and has, in a sense, completely fallen off. He was designated for assignment last week, did not take that well. And I'm not sure if he went to the Mets organization and asked to be traded, but I'm pretty sure that both sides were ready to part. So I think this is
I can explain this a little more. So what happened with Harvey is, and there's a lot of funny stuff. I'm going to make a lot of jokes in light of Matt Harvey, so just take it for what it is. But so Matt Harvey, they asked him, they said, hey, we don't want you on our major league roster right now. We want to pull up another guy because you're just not pitching well. Over the last or since 2016, Matt Harvey, I might get the ERA kind of wrong. I'll just, but he was a 9-19 with a 5.26 ERA. So most times pitchers like that should not be playing in the majors.
That ain't good.
Yeah. So Harvey did not. He should have really never even started the year with a team with those bad stats. But he's got Scott Boras as an agent, and he is of course the Dark Knight and all that stuff, and the fans still go out and do Matt Harvey Day. I've actually been to a Matt Harvey Day game before at Citi Field. It is a different atmosphere. So probably wasn't going on as much now, but still, that guy was kind of one of the lifebloods of that team. But so what happened was they said, hey, we want you to go to AAA. We don't want you on our Major League roster. We want you to get some help. Let's go against not necessarily Major League hitters in AAA and try to figure out your stuff. Well, Matt Harvey, first of all, should have went to AAA. Because Jared, do you know where the AAA affiliate of the New York Mets is?
I do not.
It is in Las Vegas.
Really?
Las Vegas 51. It's named after Area 51, of course. So that's right in Matt Harvey's element, right? Since he likes to go partying before every single start, it seems like Vegas would have been the perfect place for him to go. So, but nonetheless, all jokes aside, he declined the AAA option, which means the Mets had to, in order to get him off their roster, they had to designate him for assignment. And what that means is he will either in 10 days be outrighted to AAA, means he has to go, released, or traded. So what they did here was they traded him to the Reds. They're currently playing the Cincinnati Reds, so they probably the two front offices met up at the actual game and just said, hey, we'll make a trade. The Mets get a catcher in Devin Mesoraco. They actually needed a catcher, so it works out for them. And the Reds get a pitcher that they don't necessarily need to be good for them right now because they're 9-27. So Matt Harvey stay with New York, although good and bad and tumultuous is finally done. And Mets fans can kind of have a sigh of relief in a way. They don't have to worry about whether he's going to be good or not because he's not on the team. But overall, for me, disappointing end to what could have been one of the better pitchers in the MLB. It's always a sad story when a guy kind of fails and falters, and he could have made a lot of money this year, and now he's probably not going to make much, considering he probably won't pitch amazing for the Reds. So that always sucks. But, he has a weird lifestyle. He broke up with his model girlfriend and then went on a bender for 3 days. He, like I said, we've heard the stories of him going out in various cities like LA and San Diego the night before starts. And sometimes he pitches well, sometimes he pitches terrible. But all of a sudden, it looks like he has maybe a problem with the partying lifestyle there. But sad story for me. I don't know. What do you kind of think about the whole thing?
The Dark Knight has fallen.
Yeah, good day. I like it.
I haven't followed this story as much as you have, and I know you have a lot more analysis on it. But I do know that he has had 2 major surgeries.
True,
since he's come into the league in 2012. I know one was Tommy John's, I believe in 2013 or 14.
It was, I believe he had one before he made the major leagues, and then he of course had the one that was famous kind of a couple years ago.
Right, so then technically that would be 3 surgeries, obviously 2 since he's come up and made a name for himself. So my question to you is, I understand, listen, obviously going out the night before start, all the partying, all that stuff does not help, and that's not a way to make a good name for yourself or for the organization, and for them to trust you, to give you that huge $200, $300 million contract that you've been looking for. But do you think that the injuries played a bigger role, or do you really think that, hey, listen, not that it's not a big deal, but Tommy John surgery is so prevalent in Major League Baseball, and so many guys have done it and come back from it, that isn't really an argument or a reason why he shouldn't be playing well right now? Do you think it's more about the partying than that?
I'm going to go with the second thing you just said, where I think that with Tommy John surgery, it is unfortunately prevalent in baseball now. And so you should kind of be able to deal with it because you've seen that it doesn't necessarily affect guys in a negative way. They get the 1.5 years off or whatever, but most of them come back and have successful MLB careers. They don't end up like Matt Harvey. So, I don't know, maybe he's just a weak-minded individual and couldn't handle the fact that he might not be as good as he used to be, might not throw as hard as he used to throw. And he just decided to use alcohol and other stuff to kind of deal with that. And, unfortunately, we see this a lot. We see this in other sports, too. A famous one is Matt Bush, the number 1 pick, the former number 1 pick, who's now a pretty good reliever for Texas, but was the number 1 pick and then kind of fell into the whole alcohol, drugs route and ended up not really ever having a successful MLB career. Like I mentioned, he's up now with Texas, but he's, middle reliever. It's not much of a popular thing for a number 1 pick. But, yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to give him the benefit of the doubt on this one. I think it's continued from last year, like I mentioned. He broke up with his girlfriend, couldn't handle it, went out, disappeared. They found him in his pajamas at the stadium and stuff like that. That's not... You have a problem if something like that is happening. I can understand if occasionally before a game you're going out on a Friday or something like that. But if you're ending up at the Mets facility in your pajamas or something like that, hungover, that's kind of ridiculous. Then the last couple rumors about him going out and the GM kind of saying, "Oh yeah, it's expected now," stuff like that. I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. You got to deal with your surgeries. You got to deal with your injuries because we've seen guys like Steven Strasburg prosper from it, and even Garrett Richards, after a couple arm injuries for the Angels, has pitched well. He hasn't gone down the partying route or anything like that. So I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt. And, we'll see what he does with Cincinnati. I'm sure it won't obviously be as entertaining as what he did with New York, but nonetheless, he gets another chance. He's not out of baseball or anything. So let's transition to talk about arm injuries. Clayton Kershaw on the DL for the Dodgers. You mentioned the Dodgers have been faltering this season, and especially lately, I believe only winning 1 or 2 games out of the last 8 or something like that. So, Kershaw, this is the first time he's going on the DL with an arm injury. And this is what concerns a lot of Dodger fans. And I told you this before the show when we were kind of prepping, that this is kind of the beginning of this discussion where Kershaw really might not be back with the Dodgers after the season, because now you have the element of the front office, and I'm not saying this has been said, but this is a rumor, that the front office might see Kershaw as a liability, an injury liability, and you might not want to sign him to another giant contract, potentially pay him in the $30 million range. If he's shown you that he does have a back issue, he now has some issues with his arm. It's his bicep, it's not his elbow or his shoulder or anything. Now he has issues with his arm, which is what a pitcher needs, and he's also had the playoff falters consecutively. It's becoming a common occurrence in the playoffs for him to fail at least once. So, as Dodger fans, we're going to have to maybe deal with the fact that he might not end up being with us, or this might be the last couple times we see him, or this might be the last season, because I would have to agree with the front office. If they don't think he's injury prone and they don't think he's actually going to last like a 7-year deal, he's going to last the whole time, then why sign him? And I think I would agree with that in the front office. What do you think about that? Because I actually would have kind of a biased take on it. If Kershaw can pitch, he's still one of the best pitchers in the league. But if he's injured, I could deal with the front office getting rid of him necessarily after the season, or letting him walk if he wants to walk. He still does have 2 more years on his contract, but he can walk after the next couple of years.
Right. I have a couple things about this. Number one, listen, I think Kershaw undoubtedly is one of, when healthy, one of the best pitchers in regular season history that this game has ever seen. I don't think there's many that can argue that point. Unfortunately, when it comes to the postseason, even last year when he had a better postseason than years past, overall in the postseason he has shown that he has not been able to show up and be the dominant ace that he has been throughout most regular seasons of his career. I mentioned last season when they got to the World Series and eventually lost, but for the most part of the playoffs, he was actually pitching pretty well up until, I believe you were saying it was Game 5 of the World Series.
It was Game 5. He gave the big home run to Yuri Gurriel. That ended up kind of being one of the reasons they lost that game.
Right. And how many years has Kershaw now been in the majors? I don't want to say in the Dodgers organization.
I believe, I could be wrong, I believe it's been since 2006. So that'd be, this would be his 13th year.
Right. So he's got some miles, and some time on that arm, and I do think that his time as being, the face of Major League Baseball and the best pitcher in baseball is coming up. What I do think that organizations do, and this is across all sports, not just Major League Baseball, is that you pay players for what you think they're going to potentially do down the line. Yeah. So if you think a player is going to be good to great for the next 3 or 4 years, then you're more than likely going to offer that player a contract for 3 or 4 years. It's not like, we're we're going to give him an 8-year contract because he's Clayton Kershaw. That's just not the way that it works. Even though he's played his entire career with the Dodgers, I'm sure he's very loyal to that organization, and I'm sure he will eventually, if he ever does leave, come back and retire as a Dodger. But it's not like he's going to sit here, in my opinion, and get a lifetime contract from the Dodgers organization. I think they really need to do their homework and figure out, okay, with all the injuries going on right now, and the first injury to his actual arm, because all the other injuries have been back injuries, correct?
Well, the serious ones have been backs the last couple of years, and he's had leg issues and stuff like that.
Right.
Which aren't that back issues is a big deal, but you can deal with that kind of stuff. You can't deal with an arm issue because you can't throw the ball.
Right.
Your arm's
right.
So
I think the Dodgers need to figure out, okay, is he going to be able to come back from this injury and be the ace that we need him to be? Because I'm sure they would love to give him a $300 million contract over 10 years if he's going to produce for those 10 years. I don't think he will, and I think if they do that, they will be making somewhat of a mistake that the Angels did with Albert Pujols, giving him a 10-year contract for however many hundreds of $millions. Now listen, maybe the first year or two, Pujols was still that 30-40 home run guy that we all expected. But the last 3 years, he hasn't been that way at all, and the Angels are paying him a ridiculous amount of money. Now, listen, Pujols obviously will go into the Hall of Fame. He's a phenomenal player. He's won World Series before. But, like I said, you pay players for what you think they will do in the future, not just because he was great in the past.
Yeah.
That's just not how it works. So, I'm not saying that Dodgers will let him go or trade him away, but I really don't think that they're going to give him that long-term contract that he probably desires or that fans want the organization to give him.
Well, yeah, and I should clarify, he can the team. He's not an unrestricted free agent after this season. He's not in the situation of like Harper and Machado, where they don't have a contract past this year. He has an opt-out to leave on his own. What I'm saying though is, if he were to leave and the front office says, you know what, we're going to let you go. We think you might have some arm issues. We don't want to give you a 7-year deal because we don't think that's the right thing to do for our organization. Then it's okay with me, because he's gonna want, like you mentioned, $30 million a year, $300 million for 10 years, so that would come out to be $30 million a year. I'm okay with bringing back Kershaw at a lower rate if he's going to get injured a couple times, if he's going to have his ERA in the 3s or whatever, all that stuff. But I'm not going to bring him back for 7 years if he has arm issues, if he hasn't succeeded in the playoffs, and if he's not going to be as good as he has been the last couple of years. Because nobody's better than Kershaw in my mind when he's healthy. But you can replace him eventually with the type of guys that are in the Dodgers organization. They have pitchers coming up. You saw Buehler was part of the no-hitter the other day. He looks like he's going to be really good. You still have guys like Hyun-Jin Ryu, Kenta Maeda, and younger guys that aren't necessarily, they're not stars, but you have stars waiting in the wings. So all I'm saying is I wouldn't mind it if these injuries keep happening and these playoff failures keep happening. If he did leave, of course, I want him to stay the next 2 years. Why not? You have a contract till then. But as a Dodger fan, I just want to clarify, I now could deal with him not being on the Dodgers next year, the year after that, or in 2 years.
Right. And then my last little comment on this is that I think it's better for organizations to let a player, whether you're a star player or whatever the case may be, let that player go 1 year too early as opposed to a year too late.
Correct.
And what I mean by that is, of course, really the organization will get a lot of slack and backlash from the fans, because I'm sure the fans have a huge affection for Kershaw. But, say that they do give him an extension or he does play out the final 2 years, who's to say that he's the pitcher that he used to be, right? As opposed to letting him go a year early, and maybe he goes to another team and still plays well, but then the following season he has a major drop-off. So I would not want to invest a lot of money in a player, give him a 4 or 5 year contract when he's really only going to be good for 1 year. So I think you let him go 1 year too early, deal with a little bit of the slack, but in the end, the overall money situation and just the long-term, investment or non-investment, I think that will pay off for the team in the long run.
Well, yeah, and think about it this way, too. The Dodgers do actually have to make a decision at the end of this year. Because if Kershaw does he has the right, if he takes his contract back, then that's I believe he is getting paid around $30 million right now, or something along the lines of that. So he already is going to have a giant thing hit the salary roll. But there's been links that they might possibly go after Bryce Harper in the offseason. And that Adrian Gonzalez's contract ends, and Matt Kemp might not be with the team next year. That's another, in the teens as far as millions go off the books. You're getting around that $40 million range to possibly give money to Bryce Harper. So if that's another reason why they might let Kershaw walk, they go, well, if we have you, we might rather have Harper, the hitter. So if you leave, it's fine. Now we definitely have enough space with the Gonzalez contract coming off their books and Kershaw's contract coming off the books. You have money to actually spend and not worry about going over this luxury tax thing that is seemingly affected every team in the MLB. So there's another decision to think about, that if you actually do want another superstar on this team, you might have to make a decision like letting Kershaw go.
Think about this for a minute. Two of the faces of Major League Baseball on the West Coast, Mike Trout with the Angels and Harper with the Dodgers. Oof. That would be pretty cool for the two West Coast teams out here.
Yeah, it would be. And if all goes right, you possibly have the best pitcher and two of the best hitters. Because Kershaw could stay. They could technically still make deals to get Harper in the offseason and kind of just deal with the luxury tax or whatever. Because Harper is a once-in-generational player.
Oh, boy.
You kind of make irrational decisions. But nonetheless, a lot of Dodger talk there. Yeah, interesting times. We'll see how long this DL stint acts for him. Dodgers, by the way, have literally their four best players on DL right now. Corey Seager out for the year, Kershaw on the DL, Turner on the DL, and Puig on the DL as well. Not saying that Bellinger isn't better than Puig, but Puig has played better than Bellinger, I'd say, the last 2 months, 3 months, including the World Series. So Puig, we need him. But Dodgers do. The good news is there's a rumor that Turner's going to come back next week, and that Puig is already doing his rehab stints. So maybe getting some help there, but it's tough being a Dodger fan right now because the team is kind of the lineup every day. Is like, who are some of these players? This isn't our World Series team. So nonetheless, let's move on. Too much Dodger talk. No hitters this week. Dodgers threw one combined no-hitter. Good for them. They did it in Mexico, but like we said, they haven't really been playing well, so not much to talk about them. But James Paxton, I definitely wanted to mention this. I put this on Twitter last night. James Paxton threw a no-hitter in Toronto last night. He's originally from British Columbia, Canada. And at one point in the ninth inning, with 2 outs against Josh Donaldson, he threw in a 100-mile-an-hour fastball in his 99th pitch of the game.
What?
Yeah, that's exactly the reaction it should be. Paxton is severely underrated being on Seattle. This guy is a great pitcher, and the game before this struck out 16 guys against the Twins.
Where's this guy come from?
That's what I'm saying. He's been over in Seattle. He just has never kind of figured out this might be the year he breaks out, but this no-hitter is not an anomaly for this guy. He kind of made this no-hitter happen. This wasn't just a good old day for him. This guy he's a legitimate pitcher. People probably notice him most, maybe not now because he threw a no-hitter, but the guy that the bald eagle landed on earlier this season. And that probably annoyed him even more being from Canada. He's like, I don't even get this. What is this thing on my, I could care less about this bald eagle. I'm not even from this country. But so real cool thing there. It's always nice to see kind of guys have those synchronicities all come together. He does it in Canada, and the crowd seem to enjoy it a little bit too. They know they have one of their native sons on the mound, but just wanted to give him credit and tell kind of the cool facts about that whole no-hitter.
Oh yeah, no, definitely. I feel like with every no-hitter, there's always some great defensive plays that go along with it.
Kyle Seager
had that diving play at third. He definitely, and then I believe there's another play out in center that was made a nice play as well. So Kyle Seager is for sure that one made it SportsCenter, I believe. But there's always a couple, defensive plays that without those, there's no way that guys get no hitters. So the majority of the credit goes to obviously James Paxton, but I think he has to, he's going to buy Kyle Seager a nice dinner for that diving stop right there. I guarantee you that one.
But it's interesting. We just want to mention those, give those guys credit. Dodgers do it with Buehler. They're trying to get this right. Scott Alexander, Adam Liberatore, and Tony Cingrani getting it done. Yimi Garcia. So a lot of random names. Not the usual Dodgers pitchers like a Kershaw or a Ryu or a Rich Hill or anything involved in that no-hitter. It was a lot of the newer players for the Dodgers. So good for them. They do it to the Padres. Padres aren't the best team in the world. So impressive, nonetheless. but they haven't played well enough lately, so it's almost, that seems like more of an anomaly and not something necessarily to talk about. Cool moment. First combined no-hitter in Dodgers history, which is kind of amazing considering I think they've thrown 23 no-hitters in their whole franchise history. That's the most ever. But so they didn't have combined one, so a little bit of extra history there. And actually came with Fernando Valenzuela throwing out the first pitch before, so a little stuff there. Rivalry time. We're going to go on a little bit later to talk about the best rivalries in sports, but this Yankees-Red Sox series is going on right now. And they had a good game last night. Giancarlo Stanton with 2 home runs. Maybe he might break out. I was watching MLB Network the other day, and Joe Girardi, obviously the former Yankees coach from last year, said that he believes this is the series that Giancarlo Stanton can make himself a Yankee. So far yesterday, he did, with a line drive shot to left and a home run to right field, the opposite side of the field, too. So maybe we see Stanton start to heat up, but it increases his rivalry that's already seen a benches clearing brawl this year.
Right.
It's always fun to see Yankees-Red Sox. I know we have a mutual friend that is a big Yankees fan as well, so we kind of pay attention to them a little more. But both teams at 25-10, so we might see this matchup later in the playoffs. I'm excited. I think this is the best rivalry going around on in baseball right now. So I will try to see as many of these games as possible. I don't know about you, but I'm interested to see this. We have only about 2 minutes left in this segment, but what do you think about this series going on right now?
Oh, no, the series is great. And listen, I think the brawls in baseball, even though they're technically not brawls, because by the time both benches clear, there's too many guys, and you don't actually get any punches or anything.
Yeah, but they are the most vicious in sports.
Right, no, they are. And I will say that I think it's fun to see, right? I think it loosens things up.
Violence.
I think it riles the players up.
Yes.
And baseball not really being so much of a violent sport, it's not like hockey where guys can throw their gloves down and start to throw blows at each other, right? So, that's part of the game. But, no, it's Red Sox, Yankees, that right there is easily the best rivalry in all of baseball, and I don't think that will ever change, even if these two teams aren't playing well. The great thing is, both of these teams right now, the Red Sox, you can argue they're the best team in baseball, and the Yankees are a really, really good team. Plus, they've got Stanton, who you just mentioned, is hopefully starting to heat up, Judge, all those other players. So I think this is probably, in the last couple years, the best, or the first time that these two teams have been really, really good going up against each other. So, I can't wait to see this matchup. The Yankees were actually in Anaheim playing the Angels, I think, a couple weeks ago, and I wanted to go to a game, but the tickets were a little too expensive.
Well, a little too expensive, and my brother actually did go to one of the games, and he said that there were more Yankee fans than
that's always a given. Unfortunately, the Angels fans don't really come out and show support like you think they would.
Especially not in the early spring, too, and that's most of Major League Baseball. Like, you'll see right now, there's a lot of empty stadiums, and it's because people are paying attention to the NBA playoffs, the Stanley Cup playoffs, the NFL draft. Once it comes to summer and kids are out of school, you'll see crowds get bigger and stuff like that. So especially with that fact that just the crowds are not coming, you're going to get more Yankees fans there.
Right.
We need to go to break. Like I mentioned, though, a little later in the show, we're going to be talking about best rivalries in sports. We want to extend on this because there's a lot going on right now in sports, and there's a lot of good rivalries, and we kind of want to extend on them. So, but coming up next, right now, is of course, Do You Care? We're going to talk about a little Stanley Cup playoffs and a lot more. So this is the Cover 2 podcast on OC Rock Radio.
One strike away from a seventh game, or one strike away for the Caps from a meeting with Tampa Bay in the conference final. It is Ovechkin moving back. He gets it on to Kuznetsov, moving on in. He scores! The Capitals have made it to the Eastern Conference final for the first time in 19 years.
1-0 pitch. There's a flare out to right field, and there it is. Hit number 3,000 for Albert Pujols. The fourth player in Major League Baseball history with at least 600 home runs and 3,000 hits. Joining Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, and Alex Rodriguez, add Albert Pujols to that list.
Breaking news here on SportsCenter. Chris Mortensen reporting Matt Ryan has agreed to a 5-year extension with the Falcons that makes him the first $30 million per year quarterback with $100 million guaranteed, according to league and team sources. So he breaks the bank here. Woo! I mean, $100 million guaranteed. Show me the money. Yeah, no doubt.
Back here on the Cover 2 podcast. Once again, I'm Nick Nenad.
I'm Jared Smith.
And Jared, like I ask you every single week, do you know what time it is?
I do know, but for our viewers who don't know, tell them what time it is.
It's time for Do You Care? Okay, so it's time for Do You Care? Our favorite game here on the podcast. We do it every week because, we got to talk about some stuff that maybe isn't as important in sports, but we got to get to it. And there's certain stuff that we want to put a whole segment into. So we'll just, we'll ask each other a question and whether we care or not. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we do. But we're never in the middle. We always have an answer. So, Jared, I'm going to ask you the first question because I have the mic first. Do you care that the Vegas Golden Knights have advanced past the San Jose Sharks into the Western Conference Finals?
I do care, and it's not necessarily because I'm such a big hockey fan. It's really about how this team has gone so far in their first year as an expansion franchise. You just don't see first-year expansion teams doing what this Golden Knights team, has done. It really doesn't happen at all. I was kind of thinking before we started the show, and I knew we were going to talk about this topic, that in my opinion, and I could be wrong, and if I am, please correct me, but I know in hockey, when the Knights first got their team and they were putting their team together, if I'm not mistaken, they were able to take at least one player from every other NHL hockey team, right? A player from another team that was not under contract.
It was okay.
Correct?
The way the expansion draft went was teams got to protect a certain number of players. It was between 9 and 7 or something like that players that you could protect. Then the rest of them were completely free to get picked.
Really?
So if you had a star-studded team, you probably were going to get a player taken off. And a good example of that is Marc-Andre Fleury was picked by Vegas from the Penguins, and James Neal was picked from the Nashville Predators. Those are star players, so you wouldn't necessarily think you'd get a guy like that, but they do because those rest are sex. So they got to pick. Now they did some teams, some solids, and picked off bad contracts because I don't think they would make it to the Western Conference Finals when the season started. But nonetheless, yes, they did get to pick a single player from every single team in the NHL.
Right, and I think that's something that, like I said, I don't believe in other leagues like in basketball or baseball or in football that teams can do that as far as taking players from other organizations.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's more of just building through the draft and free agency, strictly free agency, not being able to actually take players. So I think that was a big step and one of the big reasons why the Knights were able to advance. And here's the thing, though. They look really impressive, okay? It's not like they're here, kind of scratching and clawing their way and having to win a Game 7 barely, edging out another team. I mean, they're dominating, and they're playing really well. Yeah. For most of these guys, this is their first season playing together as a team. You have to move to a new city, move your family, like all these other things come into the picture, and yet these guys have been able to put that aside and play really well. So, the Sharks swept the Ducks, and the Sharks had looked really good coming into this series.
Absolutely.
And the Knights made them look like dust. So, I think it's going to be really, really interesting to see if the Knights can make it to the Stanley Cup. If they do, I don't know. I think they have to be favored. Or if not, who knows? Maybe Vegas won't favor them, but I think I'm at least going to be rooting for them.
Yeah, Vegas ain't
No, but I will definitely be rooting for them because I think that is such a really cool thing to see. Nick, do you care that Tiger Woods has committed to playing at the Open?
No, I expected this. Not that big of a deal. I would care more if Tiger wasn't committing to playing the Open. Now, he didn't play very good in the Masters, although a lot of people thought he would, and he was kind of one of the favorites. So hopefully he can play a little better. I haven't been following golf as much since the Masters tournament, so I don't know how well he's done since then. And I do believe maybe a little bit of a break for him might help him out. I do think he'll do good. I'm not ready to sit here and say he's going to win. I wouldn't bet on that if I had to. But I do think he'll play better, and he will be competitive during the Open Championship, which I believe is being played in Scotland this year. So all this, though, is good for golf because they get a lot of viewers when Tiger plays. Jared, do you care that Matt Ryan got a $150 million 5-year deal $100 million guaranteed from the Atlanta Falcons.
You say $100 million guaranteed?
Guaranteed.
Wow. No, I do not care. I think it's great for Matt Ryan. Pretty much well-deserved. He obviously, is him along with the whole Atlanta Falcons team is going to be famous for blowing that Super Bowl. Lost a couple years ago to the Patriots. Listen, that's just the way that these contracts in the NFL are going now. The one guy is going to top the next. So obviously, Jimmy Garoppolo, Kirk Cousins are the last two guys. Maybe you can put Matthew Stafford in there. The last three guys to get contract extensions, with their respective teams. And all three of those guys that I just mentioned have never won a playoff game. Wow. So, and those guys are now all in the $100 million range. And so for Matt Ryan leading a team to the Super Bowl, it was basically expected that he would surpass those other guys and become the highest paid player. But it's not going to last long, in my opinion. You've got Russell Wilson and Aaron Rodgers coming up as the next two quarterbacks to get contract extensions. Both of those players have won Super Bowls, and so I can guarantee that they will get over $100 million guaranteed.
Yeah.
So, listen, it's a great story. Good for you, Matt Ryan. But, all these guys are just going to keep going up and one-upping each other. So, it's nothing new, and I think it's just something that's going to be expected for the quarterbacks in the NFL from now on. Nick, do you care that Albert Pujols gets 3,000 hits?
Yes, I do. He's almost run his course as far as milestones go lately. He hit his 600th home run last year. He's coming up on, I believe, 2,000 RBIs soon, and he finally gets his 3,000th hit. It's one of the reasons the Angels signed him, is to have these big days where he hits these milestone, hits and all that stuff. So it's always entertaining watching the Angels, knowing that you're about to watch history. And I was able to see it live. Ducked the ball in the short right field in Seattle. Got a great ovation from the crowd. The whole team came out and kind of congratulated him at first place. And what was really cool, I think the coolest thing was when he got the hit, he celebrated at first base. He did a rare celebration at first base. It was like a monkey off his back, and it was really cool to see a guy who we've seen the emotion come out of him. I remember a couple of years ago where he fake shot that arrow at Fernando Rodney, but he's generally kind of a peaceful type of player. To see that emotion come out of him and to know how much it meant to him to get 3,000 hits. Second Latino player, I believe, ever to get 3,000 hits. Second player from the Dominican Republic to ever get 3,000 hits. So the first being Adrian Beltre. So very, very cool moment for him there. As an Angels fan, I am more of a Dodgers fan, but you watch the Angels every single day. You're going to become somewhat of a fan of them, and it is cool to see these milestones happen on kind of our soil. Jared, do you care that the Winnipeg-Nashville Predators series is going to a Game 7?
I don't care, but I'm surprised that it's going to a Game 7. I know we did kind of a playoff hockey preview a couple weeks back before the playoffs had started, and I obviously defer to you a lot with your hockey knowledge, but Nashville, I believe I picked them to go to the Stanley Cup. Mm-hmm. And it's one of the main reasons, obviously, is because they have such a great and talented team, but two is because of their home ice advantage and that crowd. I think that really does play a huge factor. I haven't been able to follow all of these games, but I think I'm surprised, and I guess it's in a good way that Winnipeg has been able to keep up with this Nashville team, because not only did I think that Nashville was going to be the best team in their conference, but I think they're the best team in hockey, period. Mm-hmm. So listen, I mean, as you go along in these playoff matchups and you advance, the games just get tougher and tougher, and the series get harder. It somewhat does make sense, but I'm surprised that they haven't been able to close out Winnipeg. I thought they would beat them in 5. So it's a good series. The game's tonight, right?
I actually think it's tomorrow. They gave 2 days off, so yeah, we get that little extra day.
Yeah, that's weird, because I know in the beginning of series, whether it's a travel day or not, you might get 2 days off. But I thought games like 5, 6, and 7 went, you only get 1 day of rest. But potentially they're giving them 2.
Yeah, I don't know why it is. I have a feeling, and I could be wrong. If you want to check that, just in case, maybe after the segment, just to notify people if they want to watch the game. But I do believe that there's probably a scheduling conflict with like one of the NBC channels or something like that where they can't get the game on, like on today for some reason. I don't know what it would be, but we'll find out. But yeah, Game 7, of course, either tonight or tomorrow.
Right.
Give you that much.
Right.
Yeah. So,
Nick, do you care that the Capitals have finally gotten the monkey off of their backs?
I'll emulate the great Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson here. Finally, the Capitals have beaten the Pittsburgh Penguins in a second round series. Ovechkin, interesting enough, first time ever past the second round. He's been the Chris Paul of hockey lately, and Ovechkin has been considered a long time for the second best player in the league behind Sidney Crosby. So to have him not even get to the conference finals for these last couple of years has been tough. But for me, the Capitals are my rooting interest now. I've kind of backed them ever since the Ducks and Kings got eliminated. I used to go like this as far as teams I cheered for, just to be completely transparent. The Kings are number 1, Ducks are number 2. I was a Penguin. I've been a Penguins fan for the last couple of years. I like Sidney Crosby, so they were number 3, and the Capitals were always number 4. But since the Penguins had won the last 2 Stanley Cups and the Capitals had lost them, I kind of felt bad and I said, you know what? I'll cheer for the Capitals this year. So I'm going for the Capitals. I want them to win the Stanley Cup. I'm super happy that they finally got to the second round. I do believe they will get to the Stanley Cup. Not going to say they can win it because, like you mentioned, Nashville's pretty good. And even Winnipeg's a pretty good team as well. So a lot of good teams in the West. So I'm not going to guarantee that, but I do believe they will get to the Stanley Cup Finals. I think they'll ride the momentum to that. But yes, I'm very super happy. I care about this a lot. Like I said, they're my rooting interest for the Stanley Cup playoffs right now. So good for the Capitals. Congratulations to all those fans in Washington, D.C. Jared, do you care that the great Ichiro Suzuki has retired from the Seattle Mariners?
I do care. Obviously, Ichiro has fallen off last couple of years. I mean, the guy's in his 40s now.
I think he's like 44.
Yeah,
44, 45.
A little ridiculous, but no, he will easily be a Hall of Famer. Over 3,000 hits,
yes.
Just like Pujols, who we just mentioned and talked about. So yes, I do care because he obviously made a name for himself with the Mariners, but from his hitting to his fielding, he was literally an all-around player. His speed, all of that, and the fact that he came over and from Japan, and was playing. How many years did he play in Japan?
I mean, he played a good amount. Like, he probably would be close to breaking Pete Rose's record right now.
Right.
If he had played all years in the majors. Because he's
leagues.
kind of done the same thing he did in Japan. He's one of those rare cases. Well, we see it with Ohtani with the Angels now, but one of those rare cases where he hasn't missed a beat. A lot of times you see guys come over and it's not super good for them right away. But Ichiro has been a Hall of Fame player since he stepped on US soil.
He was. And the interesting thing that we were talking about off air on break is that Ichiro has supposedly said he's not completely done playing.
Yeah.
That he is retiring right now more or less because maybe he's not helping the team as much, and it's probably better that he doesn't play and let some of the other guys step up and play. But I don't think he's ruling out that he could potentially come back next year. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah,
one, the fact that he's in his mid-40s. Two, other than trying to win a World Series, it's like, what else do you have to prove for yourself?
Yeah.
You're, in my opinion, a first ballot Hall of Famer. And it's like, if you do, listen, I get the competitive spirit and the competitive fire in people, but when you say you want to retire at one point and then you might come back next year, I don't know if I've ever heard an athlete say that in a sense. Like, there's athletes, obviously, Michael Jordan and other players who have retired and then come back. But when they come out and say they want to retire, and then in that same speech say that they also may come back, I think that's a little interesting.
Well, Ichiro's never been shy with confidence, so it's not super surprising. But yeah, you're right. Like, even with the Brett Favre examples, all those times, he still never said, "Oh yeah, I'm retiring, but I'm gonna be like, what is that? You're not even retiring. Then you're just like taking the year off or whatever, I guess."
Right. So yeah, no, very interesting. But I do care because he will be a first ballot Hall of Famer. And, sad to see one of the greatest players in Major League Baseball history go away. Nick, last question for you, and you get the back-to-back hockey questions. Mm-hmm. Do you care that the Tampa Bay Lightning advanced and beat the Boston Bruins in 5 games?
No, I don't care, because the way Tampa Bay has played this year, this is kind of expected. It would have been a failure of a season if they wouldn't have been able to get past the second round. Tampa Bay was the best team in the Eastern Conference for most of the season. The team they actually beat in the series, the Boston Bruins, were the other team that kind of overmatched them a little bit later in the season, but Tampa Bay kind of picked it up once they got some guys back from injuries. Tampa Bay's been the best team in the NHL for a lot of this season, along with, like you said, the Nashville Predators. So not entirely unexpected that they get to the second round. What a great series this Capitals Lightning series is going to be. Both two fast teams, very similar. You have two kind of sniper players in, you have two Russian snipers. You got Kucherov from Tampa Bay. You got Ovechkin from the Capitals, of course. You have a matchup between Nicholas Backstrom, who's played a lot better than he usually does in the playoffs this season for the Capitals, against Steven Stamkos. The goalie matchup should be interesting. Because you have Vasilevsky, who's playing in his first full year, I believe, as a starter in the AHL, so he'll get his chance to kind of earn a spot there. And then, of course, you have this Braden Holtby, Michael Grubauer thing going on in Washington. So interesting matchup. The teams are very similar. Like I said, I believe the Capitals will ride the momentum and get past them. But it should be a great series, but not unexpected. Tampa Bay need to do this, so I don't care as much that they won the series, but I do care about this next series. But I think it's going to be a barn burn. It's going to be entertaining. So that is the end of Do You Care? That marks the end. So like we mentioned earlier, we're moving on to talk about some of the best rivalries in sports. We're talking about all sports. We're not just talking about baseball. So you're going to hear Red Sox, Yankees, Celtics, Lakers, all those kind of things. Coming up next on the Cover 2 podcast.
But you can still stretch this game out.
They got a chance to win it with a three, man. They got a chance to win it. This kid said, I'm going to make an impact in this game. And he has made an impact.
Who will take the shot?
Will he make a bigger impact?
Rivers!
Unbelievable!
An incredible finish here in Chapel Hill. Freshman Austin Rivers with a three at the buzzer to win it for Duke.
Rondo looking, gets it to Pierce. Pierce turns, back out. Rondo fakes, dribbles, puts up the three. Won't go. Rebound to Gasol. Kicks it out to Odom. Odom throws it ahead. The Lakers repeat back-to-back titles. The LA Lakers, the 2010 NBA champions.
Welcome back to the Cover 2 podcast. Final segment of the show, and like Nick mentioned before we went to break, this segment will be all about greatest rivalries in sports. So we're not sticking to just one sport.
No.
We're going to go all across the board: football, basketball, baseball, basically whatever comes in our minds. I know we've looked up some certain things, but a lot of this is going to be a little off the top of our heads, and maybe some of our own favorite teams. I know, like you mentioned, the Boston Celtics and the Lakers, the Michigan Wolverines and Ohio State Buckeyes. I mean, there's so many great rivalries in a bunch of different sports. So really, this came about because the Red Sox and the Yankees are playing this weekend, and we just felt that it'd be a good time to sit and talk about who we think some of the best rivalries in sports are to us.
Well, it's always fun to these discussions. I always like to have these discussions now because you see Red Sox and Yankees is always a rivalry. But when they're brawling and the stars are hitting home runs and the pitchers are pitching well, that makes it even better. That makes it the true rivalry. There's always a couple, you'll see teams play each other in the playoffs, and then there's that rivalry for 2 or 3 years, but that's not really a true rivalry. We're going to be talking about these ones where the lifeblood of the fans hates that other team. And I know you even said on the podcast, it may have been next week or last week or 2 weeks ago, I threw you under the bus and said, you're making this decision because you hate the Celtics.
And I
you said correct.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. So there's a perfect example right there. And I don't like necessarily talking nice about the Seahawks in football either because I'm a Cardinals fan. So you will even see it with our opinions here on the show as well. And it's fun to talk about. So Jared, fire away. What's the first one you want to talk about? The first one that kind of comes to your head
The first one to me is Lakers Celtics.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And for me, listen, both of these franchises have met 12 times in the NBA Finals. That doesn't really happen too often in sports, and obviously I know with college sports it's a little bit different. But with professional sports, for two teams who have such hatred for each other and have had such so many Hall of Famers and great players on their rosters, to meet 12 times in the NBA Finals is pretty amazing. I mean, for me, I go back to not necessarily watching, but at least hearing and going on YouTube and checking out the days of Magic Johnson and Larry Bird. And for me, that's where it started. I grew up a Laker fan, and so that's where I kind of started to go back and watch old games and clips and see how physical the game was, but also the respect, at least that Magic Johnson and Larry Bird had for each other. I know there's a lot of players, Kevin McHale, and you can go down the list of guys who really, disliked each other and wanted to, hurt their opponents. But at the end of the day, Magic Johnson and Larry Bird had such great respect for each other. They were great competitors, and they wanted to kick each other's butts. But the fact that, whoever won, they could in a sense shake their hands and walk away. I think that was a great sign of respect for one another.
Well, I'm glad you brought this one up. This is definitely, I think, the one we almost probably could talk about the most. You said you think it starts with Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, but it actually really started with Jerry West and Bill Russell.
Right. No, I just mean for myself.
Correct. Right. I get what you're saying.
Yes.
But so this rivalry has been going on where they've had amazing finals games in all these series for decades at a time. I mean, this isn't just like something that happens every three, this has happened a lot. And then you had the most recent reincarnation with the Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce Celtics versus the Kobe, Pau Gasol Lakers.
Right.
So it just keeps restarting, and that is the true rivalry. That's what I was talking about. If the Lakers and Celtics play right now, probably not that big of a deal, right?
Yeah, no, I think...
But when they're actually both good, that's where you see the rivalry come back.
Right. I think we need to preface this by saying that, listen, I mean, I'm sure if you're a fan of a certain team, doesn't matter what the sport it is, and, I'm sure there could be millions of other rivalries. In my opinion, a rivalry is made when teams play each other in the playoffs, when it really counts.
Correct.
When you're playing for a championship, or you play in multiple playoff games or series throughout 2 or 3 year span or something like that. I think that's how rivalries build. You can go in the regular season and play the same opponent every single year and go back and forth. And I think that's good, but really in the end, for me, it's about what you do in the playoffs and in championship series that makes these games rivalries.
No, you're 100% right. I mean, you can. I was just thinking about this one. The Rockets and Clippers had a little bit of a rivalry this year. That's not really a rivalry though.
Right.
I mean, it's a rivalry for now. And the Rockies and Padres might have a rivalry this year because they've already had a giant brawl happen. But that's just this year. Lakers Celtics has been going on since the 60s. So it's always fun to see those series happen. Right now, not necessarily prime, but this is another thing I want to say. What if, because we see the Celtics look like they're going to be good for a while, okay, at least as long as Brad Stevens is their coach. If the Lakers somehow did get LeBron, we might have another incarnation of the Lakers-Celtics rivalry.
Oh, there's no might. That would definitely happen.
Yeah, because LeBron would have to get through the Warriors, obviously. But,
right, but the Celtics are going to get Kyrie Irving back. They've got Jason Tatum. They've got Al Horford. I mean, the Celtics have some talented players on that roster. So if the Lakers, with their young nucleus, if they can get a LeBron James or a Kawhi Leonard or a Paul George or another superstar to go along with that young team and elevate them into playoff contention, then I definitely think you could see this rivalry heat back.
Yeah, and how cool would that be? LeBron representing the Lakers versus the Celtics, and obviously they'd be more of a team where it's not really based on one star, where as you'd have LeBron.
Do you now listen? Of course, I would like to see that, and as a Laker fan, I would love for LeBron to come to LA. But do you think there would be an asterisk around that rivalry because LeBron, didn't grow up? Or I'm sorry, not grow up, but start and finish his career with the Lakers, or because Kyrie wasn't with the Celtics his whole career? I mean, listen, Magic Johnson, Larry Bird. Magic Johnson only played for the Lakers. Larry Bird only played for the Celtics. It's like I think there's something to say about players who stick with one organization for their entire career, or at least for the majority of their career, and make a name for themselves.
Yeah, it's tough. See, nowadays, I think all that stuff's kind of over. I think Kobe was like the last dude that's really probably going to play for a team his whole career, and really be as loved by a fan base. I mean, we see every single time that dude comes back to Staples Center, it's a party.
Right.
Okay? But no, I don't think that's true necessarily, because the Celtics kind of had hired guns in Garnett and all of them. When Garnett especially came over, that was kind of a star joining the Celtics to win a championship. And so I actually think it'd be less of a problem, since LeBron would be joining a team that is less superior than the Cavs, to be honest, unless he has other stars. But no, because Kyrie got traded. What's he supposed to do? It's not like LeBron would obviously be getting signed, but I think if you face each other, you do have not necessarily the Lakers-Celtics players in a rivalry, but you do still have that LeBron-Kyrie stuff. You have two young teams. I think they'll eventually develop to really hate each other. But yeah, so I just want to bring that up because I knew, obviously, with all these rumors about LeBron possibly going to the Lakers, that would almost reignite this rivalry, which would be cool for all fans in sports and in the NBA.
Right, okay.
All right,
I brought up the Lakers-Celtics, so you get the next pick.
I will move on. We kind of talked about Red Sox-Yankees, so I won't jump into that one as much. Dodgers-Giants, I think, is a big one. And we've seen good things come from these and we've seen tragic things come from these rivalries. We've seen fans put into comas. We've seen a fan killed on one side of it. So this is one of those rivalries where it literally has gone into the stands. And not that I'm not here to say that's more entertaining and that makes a rivalry better, but this is another example of a true rivalry. This goes back to when both teams were in New York. Okay? Another true example of a rivalry. The Dodgers and Giants have been battling since Willie Mays, since Jackie Robinson. It's reignited with the Giants winning 3 World Series, and now last year the Dodgers getting in the World Series, the Dodgers winning the division 5 years in a row. This has, come back. There's been, Madison Bumgarner has incited Yasiel Puig, and there's always been this stuff going on. So this is another true rivalry that's been going on for even longer than the Celtics-Lakers rivalry.
Yeah, it has. This rivalry actually started in the 1890s.
Oh my goodness!
So
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
A little ways back.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
no,
it's
and
far back.
I believe,
130 years.
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, it was the Giants won in 2010, 2012, 2014, right? So yeah, in a 6-year span, 3 World Series, and the Dodgers are probably sitting there like.
Yeah, and I thought the Dodgers would get one on them last year, but it didn't happen.
Yeah.
It didn't happen.
What was the last year that the Dodgers won the World Series?
88.
It's been since 88.
So this is the 30th year going.
Wow.
Yeah. So, but the Giants, I don't believe had won for a while when they won
before
in 2010.
that.
So it's kind of similar. I mean, Dodgers are still a pretty good team. I don't see them going away. I see them winning multiple championships in the next 10 years. So they'll eventually even up. And the Giants have kind of been on a little downturn lately, but. It definitely ignites rivalry when one team's dominant too.
Oh, it does. And like you mentioned, I almost forgot, unfortunately, about the whole fighting and the fans and all that stuff. Yeah. And I mean, listen, I am one of those fans that when I go to a game or anything like that, a live event, listen, you get a couple drinks in you. You're feeling good, right? You see a fan in another opponent's jersey. And listen, you want to start, talking to them and jabbing back and forth.
Yeah.
I'm totally cool with that. Okay, I would do that all day long, as long as it's about the sport that we're talking about, or it stays relative to sports. But the moment you want to start talking about my mama, or you want to, say something about my family, or you want to step up and get in my face, that's when things get a little out of hand. And unfortunately. I'm not saying that it wouldn't happen without alcohol, but I think alcohol has a lot to do with it.
Well, definitely.
And you start antagonizing people. It gets a little ridiculous. I'll bring up a little story. When I was 10 years old, my dad got tickets to the Dodger game. And it was 2 tickets, so he brought me, and there were really good seats. We sat field level. I think we were 3 rows back.
Who were they playing? They were playing Giants.
The Giants.
They were playing Giants.
And we were in the seats where you could... They have the waiters and waitresses coming to you, but you could also go in and grab food and stuff. So I had, a couple times oh Dad, I want a soda or I want this, blah blah blah. So it's okay, go ahead and get whatever you want, right? So little did my dad know that the Giants and the Dodgers are a big rivalry. Well, I forget if he gave it to me or if I just had it, but I wore a Giants cap.
Oh man, what are you doing?
To the game, right? And I had a black shirt on. So listen, I'm a 10-year-old kid, right? Trying to go down to get a hot dog and some ice cream, and literally I'm getting stared down by these Dodger fans who were looking at me. Dude, I come back like almost crying.
Oh,
and my dad's like, what happened? Like, what are you doing? And I'm like, Dad, all these guys are like talking to me and giving me weird looks and all this stuff. And then he literally looked at the hat that I was wearing, and I could just see it in his face. I will never forget this. He didn't say anything to me because I don't think he wanted to like worry me anymore. Yeah. But in his head, I think the light bulb went on, and he was like, oh crap. He shouldn't be wearing that in the stands at Dodger Stadium with all these crazy fanatics. So, yeah, listen, I don't think, and I'm not just trying to single out Dodgers fans. I think it's a lot of fans, but like, they don't care if you're an adult or if you're a kid. If you're wearing the wrong jersey, you are going to get harassed. And that's just how it is. So, like I said, you know, the whole jabbing back and forth is one thing, but I think at a certain point it gets too far when you want to start getting physical.
And it has gotten too far. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is just to show you, you know, how passionate some of these fans get, is that where people get physically harmed. And although the Dodger one was more of a gang thing in the end of it, it was more of gang members kind of just, you know, picking a dude randomly. But we had the incident with a guy getting hit in the head with a chair and unfortunately passing away after it too a couple years ago. So, but even that's a great story because that shows you that, you know, and I'm sure the Giants would have done the same thing to you if you were wearing a Dodgers hat at AT&T Park, you know? So it's interesting. But it's one I wanted to bring up because we're kind of showing you the levels of how far some of these rivalries can go. Jared?
Right.
What's your next one you want to bring out?
I'm going college basketball, Duke, North Carolina.
Oh, and this is an interesting one because they have different players every year.
They do. They have different players every single year.
Rivalry.
But also every single year they reload. Coach Krzyzewski is, in my opinion, I'm a big Duke fan. I follow them because of Coach K. And the way that they have been able to recruit, I mean, this year they have the top 3 or the top 4 players in the nation who are committed to Duke. I mean, I think since either the late 90s or since 2000, there's only been one March Madness tournament where Duke and North Carolina have not been in it or ranked as a number 2 or number 3 seed. I mean, every single year. So it's more than just a rivalry. These two teams are not only rivalries when they play each other, but they're also just great competitive teams in general. It's like you don't really have too many years where Duke and North Carolina are bad teams. And it's the way that they recruit. It's the way that they play. I believe it was the first matchup that they played this year, and I forget in the times frame and the game span that it was, but both Duke, North Carolina, up to this year, had literally scored the same amount of points.
Oh my goodness!
So, and I forget what the points was. I need to look it up, but they were literally even in points. So both of these teams, and I believe they're like, I think North Carolina has the advantage in wins, but it's only by like a couple.
And this one fluctuates because this is literally so much of a true rivalry because you mentioned thinking about the points. I cannot tell you from year to year who's going to be better between North Carolina and Duke. One of them could win the national championship every single year.
Right.
And one of them could be, you know, complete trash. But, like, it's not like one team has really dominated this rivalry. It's been, like, pretty even for a long time, even though there's new players every year. It's crazy.
Okay, so I found that stat.
Okay, here it is.
Going back 41 years, both of these teams have played each other 100 times.
Yeah.
They've split. They're 50-50.
Yeah.
And the points, Duke has 7,767 points. North Carolina has 7,765 points.
Dude, that's crazy.
It's ridiculous.
That is so crazy.
You can't make this stuff up.
That might be one of the best stats I've ever heard in my life.
Right,
like
and not to mention that these teams are literally down the street from each other.
Yeah.
Right? So it's not like they're playing in different cities or different states. You can drive 10 minutes and be on the other, you know, from Duke and go to North Carolina. I believe it's Tobacco Road. That's the main road that separates these two schools. So, I mean, I'm sure these athletes, they see these guys out of campus and, you know, at restaurants and all this stuff. So it's this rivalry is more than just on the court. It's they're interacting with each other all the time, and who knows, they're probably friends with each other. But I think this is definitely one of the best rivalries in sports. There's no way you can mention rivalries and not have these two teams.
I agree with that, and you have legendary coaches that have helped this out too. Roy Williams and Mike Krzyzewski, just another thing to add to the list of this rivalry. Okay, so let me think of another one here. Oh no, I'll make it easy for you on this one, Jared. I'll go a little NFL. Cowboys, Giants. Now you could do Cowboys, Eagles. You could do Cowboys, Redskins.
Yeah, Cowboys always seem to be
the case, but I feel like it's the Cowboys. I'll do this. The Cowboys versus anybody in the NFC West as the entire thing. I think you're not fine. There's no other team in the NFL that I think has so many legitimate rivalries with their in-conference opponents. So I'll let you describe this one a little bit. Being a Cowboys fan, Okay, so we'll play a little game here on this one. So when I'll say I'll say the name of the team, and you give me the first word that comes to your head when you think of this team. So I'll start with the Redskins.
I almost puked. I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
You said the Redskins?
That was 2 words, but go. Yeah, the Redskins. 1 word to describe them. First word that comes to your head when I say the Washington Redskins.
Pathetic.
Wow, that's so harsh to start it. I can't wait till we see what he says about the Eagles and Giants. So, all right, number 2, Redskins are pathetic. Mark it down on your list. New York Giants. We got a pause, dramatic pause in here now.
Yeah, dramatic pause.
First word.
Underachieving.
Okay.
And that's in recent years, I guess.
Especially last year.
Yeah, obviously they've won 2 Super Bowls with Eli Manning, so that's more Super Bowls than the Cowboys have won recently. But in the last couple of years, underachieving.
Yeah. This one should be entertaining. This is what happened last year. Philadelphia Eagles.
Oh, heartbreaking. Heartbreaking.
There you go. But see, the reason I want to do that, though, is to show you what a fan of a team, he sees these rivalries, and that's what he's thinking. There was the one where it was, we dominate this team. This team isn't that good. There's the one where it's almost like a disappointment. They're not as good because you want the rivalry to be good. And then, of course, the Eagles, heartbreaking because Cowboys were primed possibly for a Super Bowl run last year. And then who wins it? The rival team, the Eagles.
Right. I think, listen, it is on the field play as well. But in my opinion, and this is even as a Cowboys fan, a lot of the reason why the Cowboys have such a big draw with networks and being on TV so much and other teams wanting to play them and beat them so badly is because of Jerry Jones and because of the marketing aspect and the way that he has built this team. It's to him, and listen, I know he is a big, obviously, football guy, but it's more than football. He's built this team to be the most profitable sports franchise in the world, and that's over Real Madrid. That's over the New York Yankees. I mean, you're talking the
probably like Manchester United too.
Yeah, no. So I think it's more than just on the field. It's really what Jerry Jones has built this franchise as. And listen, when Jerry Jones bought the Cowboys, I believe it was in the early '90s. The Cowboys won 3 Super Bowls in the mid '90s. So I mean, it was kind of like, oh wow, this guy really knows what he's doing. And ever since then, and now I'm not saying it's all Jerry Jones' fault, but the Cowboys have not really been relevant ever since the mid to late '90s. So yes,
I wouldn't say they're not relevant, but they have been relevant in a championship.
In
context.
A championship form,
yeah.
Okay, I will agree with you on that sense. Yes, they've been relevant, but and to me as a fan, the only thing that matters is winning championships. And when you don't do that, they can be the #1 sports franchise in the world, and they can be on TV all the time and all this stuff. But at the end of the day, it's about winning, and you want to create more rivalries, win championships, or at least make it to the playoffs consistently and be a formidable team consistently. So I think that is, I guess I'm being a little harsh on them, but listen, I agree. The Cowboys have had major rivalries with their division opponents, but if they want to really continue those rivalries, they need to make it to the playoffs and have something to back up, saying that they're rivals.
True, and you're not being harsh because if you want something to be harsh, all I have to do is talk about the Cardinals, like the last 10 years, and 2 disappointing kind of Super Bowl runs and all this stuff. I think the Cowboys are just fine. I wanted to say this about, you even talk about the way you describe the 3 words you used. It just keeps coming back because You said pathetic in the Redskins. The Redskins haven't done anything for a while.
No, and that's also because of their off-field issues and their name. It's more than just for them. It's also more than on the field. It's the Redskins name. It's all the allegations going on with their cheerleaders. It's the entire organization as a whole. That's the reason why they get pathetic, is because that's what they are.
And the Giants, I like that you said underachieving, because they won 2 Super Bowls
the last couple years. And listen,
when the Cowboys aren't winning,
right.
So that's a good one. And then of course the Eagles heartbreaking because they won the Super Bowl last year. So I think you described those two perfectly. So Jared, give me one more, and then we'll kind of do another thing after. But just give me one more rivalry to talk about.
One more. All right, so we got Lakers Celtics. So we hit basketball.
Yeah.
We got Dodgers Giants. We hit baseball.
We hit college sport.
We got college. We got Duke and North Carolina. So we got college.
You can do another one though. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah. I'm just trying to mix it up a little bit. Ohio State, Michigan. That's
pretty good one. Football. Really.
That's college football. That's
definitely one where the last couple of years they've been ranked in the top 10. And this one I can compare kind of to the Lakers Celtics a little bit, because these teams, they're always going to be that rivalry game. Especially college fans are so crazy too, and the fan bases. But when they're actually good and they play each other, especially the last couple of years, we've seen these big matchups near the end of the season. That's when you know it's a real rivalry. So that's a very good one you bring up. That one is always entertaining. You have Jim Harbaugh versus Urban Meyer right now. You had, I'm forgetting the coaches, so I don't want to butcher their names, but you had the legendary coaches back in the day for Michigan and Ohio State. This is another example of a true rivalry. Might be one of the best in sports, to be honest.
Bo Schembechler.
Yeah.
Woody Hayes. Yeah, no, the thing that I love, and this isn't discrediting, any of the other sports that we mentioned, especially college basketball, but in college football, I think the rivalry can be even greater because you get one game a year.
Yeah, true. Good example.
Like maybe if you play each other in the playoffs now, but
because even the NFL has 2 games a year.
Right. So you only get one. And 1 year it's on your home turf, the next year it's the opponent's home turf. So, and it's typically always at the end of the year, which is great. So both teams are established, and I think that's fantastic. That it's a build up to one game. And like I said, I'm not discrediting college basketball because they get 2, and that's still good. But college football, it's like, all right, we are guaranteed to only play each other once, and then if we make it to the playoffs, there's a slight chance we play each other again. So it's really all or nothing for one game, put everything on the line, all that. I think it's great.
I like it. So now, we've got 3 minutes left in the podcast. I want you to give me an underrated one that people might not necessarily know about, that you find interesting to watch whenever these 2 teams play.
Underrated. Just because, and this one isn't necessarily underrated because I think a lot of people know about it. To me, maybe it's underrated because I don't follow it as much. The Packers and the Bears going to the NFL. I think that's underrated in a sense. That one goes back.
Unfortunately, the Bears have not played that well the last couple years, so that's why people kind of forget about it.
Yeah.
But when the Bears were in the Super Bowl hunt, that was a very good game.
That was, I think you have to go back to Mike Ditka and Brett Favre.
Yeah, we're kind of waiting for almost the reincarnation of that rivalry. It's at that time where kind of the Celtics and Lakers right now, where it's like, okay, one team is good and the other team is not good, and the other one team has not been good for a while, and the Lakers.
Yeah, so this one is a past rivalry that I'm hoping can get back to some relevance, because listen, the Chicago Bears, they've got Trubisky, they've added some really nice pieces. Now they're still a really young team, but I don't think they're the crappy team that they've been the last couple years. So hopefully, if they can continue to play well, and Aaron Rodgers, he's probably still got another 5 to 6 years left in him easily. So, I would love to see this rivalry get going again, but this is definitely, Lombardi. The Super Bowl trophy is named after Vince Lombardi, so that right there alone, I think, made this a rivalry. So, yeah, this one is definitely an older rivalry that goes back 60, 70, 80 plus years, and hopefully this one can come back.
Yeah, a lot of my intermediate family is from the Illinois area. My mom was actually born in Illinois. And so whenever I go over to my aunt and uncle's house, they got a lot of Bears stuff.
Oh, yeah.
So I could care. I'm a Cardinals fan. I could care less. But those fans are still dedicated, and they even living in Arizona and stuff like that, they still hate the Packers. They don't like Aaron Rodgers. They don't like Brett Favre. All them. So it's interesting. My underrated one. I gotta do this quick. Penguins and Flyers in hockey. We didn't name a hockey one. very close to each other. And what's driven this one is a star being on the Pittsburgh Penguins. You have Sidney Crosby now, you had Mario Lemieux back in the day, and you had the Broad Street Bullies, a team that literally based their entire team, how they ran it, on beating people up. So that's a nice one. A couple years ago when they played a series in the playoffs, they literally had like 200, 300 penalty minutes in every single game. They were fighting all over the place. So that's one that's lasted from about the 70s on, even to this year. They played each other in the playoffs. So nonetheless, that is a good rivalry as well. All right, that's the end of the podcast. As you hear the music right there, it's been a fun one today. I'm glad we got to do the rivalries one there, and obviously a lot more NBA playoffs. Excited for that Rockets-Warriors series.
Oh, yeah.
Excited to see who wins Game 5 tonight between the Celtics and 76ers, who wins Game 7 between Winnipeg and Nashville. To finally fill out this conference finals so we can truly kind of predict what's going to go. But for me, I'm Nick Nina.
I'm Jared.
And this has been Cover 2 Podcast.